Can we get some fries for the table?
Okay, yeah, we're coming in off the music.
Yeah.
Right.
Roll intro.
With our intro by young Carter Bayless.
Okay.
Right, playing our drum breaks on the way in.
Okay.
And here we are, episode 1.
Episode 1.
Oh, you're doing up your buttons now.
I'm doing up my buttons because I was warned that one of the things we don't want to do on this podcast is distract people. And it would be wrong to have a first impression that wasn't right. Are you big on first impressions?
I am.
Yeah.
I am.
And so somebody's listening to the podcast. What do you think should be their first impression about why they're listening to this?
Why are they listening to this? Well, this was a self-indulgent activity on my part that I wanted to do.
Okay.
That I convinced you to do along with me.
Okay.
To get me out of a bit of a apathetic funk that I was in. It's a little bit of therapy for me doing this. Because it's sort of an answer to an existential crisis. I don't know if it's the answer to the existential crisis I've been going through, but you and I have been getting together for the last couple of years, having these lunches where we have these really interesting conversations, and I thought I'd like to explore that in a podcast.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because I know how much you say no to, and I know that you're not usually a very open person when it comes down to both your career and family is very important to you. And so when you said, yeah, I'd like to do something, I never really wanted to push it because I knew if it wasn't right for you, nothing could be right about this. So while you sort of already explained all the different reasons why you'd want to do something like this, let me ask you just very, very straight. Why do you think people listen to podcasts anymore? You know, it's 20 years. You know that? Podcasts have been around for 20 years.
Really?
Yeah. So why do you think in 2023, whatever year we're in?
I can tell you why I listen to podcasts.
All right.
Because I've been working from home for 18 years. I've been working independently for 18 years. I didn't have an office to go to. I don't have sort of coworkers that I hang out with. And I was a corporate guy before I did all this. So you always, you get in the morning, you'd be around the coffee machine, you'd joke around during the day, people would pop in and out of your office. And you'd have this sort of social environment with the people that you worked with. And then once I started working on my own with my brother, and I've been working from home before people actually started working from home.
Right.
Radio, Howard Stern, the people on that show and the podcast were sort of like having that white noise of coworkers, sort of people you could go to on a daily basis or a weekly basis, that gave you some sort of social environment, even though you weren't interacting with them.
So you found a camaraderie in being able to rely on listening to those conversations.
Listening to strangers.
Yeah.
And I like listening to strangers.
And you like listening to strangers.
But for me, this is weird because this is completely counterintuitive for me.
Right.
Because, like I said, I've been doing this for 18 years with my brother, and the nature of being a manager is such that you have to be behind the scenes. Right. And I was always much more outgoing than I became over this time frame. So I kind of had to subvert my personality to do that job. And I kind of wanted to get some of that back, given some of the, going through COVID and going through all this stuff and getting older and trying to figure out what I'm doing for this next phase of my life, in addition to doing the stuff that I am doing. And so it's a little bit weird. I'm extremely self-conscious right now.
Yeah, I
Unlike
can tell.
you.
No, you're not. Now, again, in the two answers that you've alluded to so many different things that some people who are listening probably would not even know about you. So first of all, you live this duality. You have a professional career. You are perfectly fine as the elder brother in this family, the Peters, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're the leader. You're doing the things that most people would expect of a nice educated kid to do, and then all of a sudden, bam, you're managing one of the biggest acts. You're developing all of this stuff. What is that hard transition like? What year are we talking about? Where do you go? What did you do? Why?
You mean with when I started that, or when I'm starting
so
this?
So you said 18 years ago, podcasting you started listening to. That was when your journey started.
Well, I wasn't listening to podcasts back then. I'll be perfectly honest.
So it was mostly Stern, etc.?
It's mostly Stern and radio stuff back then.
Okay.
Not local radio, though. It always freaks out local radio people when I say I never listened to local radio.
You never did?
No, because I always found local radios for like commuting and stuff.
Yeah.
Right? So I wasn't commuting.
Right.
Right? So
but not even news?
Well, news is available on so many different sources now,
That's
right?
interesting.
And I don't need the local news that much,
Yeah.
right? And if you just flick on CP24 or something like that, you kind of get your news fix for the city, and that's about it. But I tend to focus more on international news and U.S. politics and stuff than sort of the local Toronto or Canadian news. It doesn't really do anything for me.
And you are internationally, like you lived internationally for a part of your life as well.
Yeah. I lived in Germany. I've lived in South Florida. And I've traveled around the world extensively before I started doing what I'm doing now.
Which is interesting because I always thought, so my angle on this is very different because I don't know you outside of your career until this podcast and developing this podcast and more of our professional conversations expanded to personal. And so I know a watcher's point of view of you and your brother's career that it's never fact-based. Like I just kind of made some details up and assumed certain things as a result of covering and interviewing your brother. So one thing I didn't know, for example, is that it's not like you and your brother hooked up and then you traveled the world together, built this industry, et cetera, et cetera. You're actually well-traveled prior to doing world tours.
Yeah. I was always in international business. So, well before I was working with my brother, I was doing, I lived in Germany for 3 years. I traveled to Russia, North Africa, across Europe, China. And even before that, I was always international business. That's just where I landed right from the get-go.
What drove you at that point in your life? What made you want to do any of this? And brother was home?
He was doing his thing.
Like not comedy though. Comedy.
No, he started in 89, right? So he started in 89 and I started working when I was 21. So that's 85, right? And I went through a few permutations, but it's always been international for me. And so, when we started touring internationally, people were always kind of freaked out, like, oh, what's it like? You go to all these places.
Yeah.
And for me, it was just normal, to go to London, England versus going to Montreal. There wasn't much of a difference to me. They were one and the same.
That's interesting. And so did you find yourself, so what led to it? What do you say? Why do you say give it up? Why do you say give up a perfectly normal career path?
Oh, I hated it.
Oh, you did hate it.
I hated it. I was in oil and gas before I started doing this, and I hated it. Absolutely hated it. It was a strange kind of very waspy corporate environment that I was in, and I was definitely a square peg in a round hole on that one. It was a very, very strange situation.
I was trying to figure out what makes you wake up one morning and stop and say, I think this is the challenge I need to take.
Oh, it was... Well, there were a couple of things. One is I was embroiled in like crazy politics at that company. There was a management shift. The guys who got promoted, they were supposed to take me with them to the new division. It's all quite dry and very corporately political. And I was always pretty rebellious. I didn't like to come to work on time. I didn't believe in like coming in the morning, like you had to be there at 8:30. And a lot of guys were really dogmatic about this thing back then.
Yeah.
Right?
Was it an American company?
A Canadian company.
Huh.
Canadian company. And that is where I met my wife, however.
Right.
But yeah, no, I was involved in a lot of office politics and stuff like that, and I was getting sick of it. And needed to make a change. And my brother's stuff right at that time was really, it went from 0 to 60. Young Chris has me doing a microphone adjustment, so there's a little bit of a continuity thing. You'll see a slight difference in the microphone stand.
If somebody's paying attention to
if they're paying that much attention, yeah.
Then we're screwed.
We'll cut to Mohit on that anyway.
Yeah, most people do.
Keep the camera on him.
Most people do.
But yeah, go ahead.
I was getting into the changeover in the career, the wake up, the sudden realization that you had to jump on board and make something happen with your brother.
I was staying at work till 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night as his stuff was starting to take off.
What do you mean by take off? What does take off mean in the 2000s and 90s for comedians?
We're doing a lot of stuff on my brother right now. Well, it's kind of brotherly focused.
Yeah, I know. I just need to figure out the transition so I can go back. Yeah. So it's important trust me.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It's very brotherly focused right now. The whole point of this was to get away from the brotherly thing.
I promise you, there's
and then we have to cut back to you from breakfast television to CFMT.
Yeah, sure.
Oh no, we're going there.
I guess what I'm trying to figure out is there has to be a lot that you're willing to give up for a massive amount of uncertainty. what is that feeling that you wake up and say, yeah,
I hated what I was doing. And his stuff was literally blowing up from the Comedy Now special. And that was the beginning of being able to cut up video files and audio files and send them around the world. That was right at the birth of YouTube, Google. Wi-Fi became more of a thing as opposed to plugging your phone cord into your laptop or computer to connect to the web. So everything we benefited greatly by convergence. He was at the right place at the right time with the right special that came out in 2004. YouTube, all those things got launched later that year into 2005. And then he was starting to get inquiries from all over the world. He was getting inquiries from the States and things like that. And I went with him on a couple of those early gigs down to the States because that was completely new for him.
Right. And when you mean down to the States, you mean just meetings, etc.?
No, he was doing shows. Like he was doing shows in Chicago. He was doing shows in New York. So I went down when he did the shows in New York, and I was sort of analyzing what was good, bad, and indifferent about the work that he was doing. I was helping him with the logistics and stuff like that.
One thing I don't understand about that whole thing, and I've asked you about this before, I'm a tech guy and I love tech.
Did you always love tech?
Yeah, I've always loved tech. In fact, I've always been more interested in where tech is going than the actual content being made by tech or as a result of tech. In fact, most of the time I've seen social media grow, I've looked at it and said, this isn't the best use of this platform. But one of the things I find surprising is that nobody from YouTube ever called you. And you guys were like one of the first.
Yeah. It's funny with YouTube because we went back to them a few years ago for one of the, if not the last special or the special before that. And we had we had some contacts at YouTube, some really great people out of LA and out of San Francisco who were very keen to get us onto YouTube at that time. And what YouTube was doing was they were buying content. Right, they had YouTube Red, I think it was.
Yeah, the subscription.
Right? Yeah. So they were buying content, so they had money to spend, and so these people that were working there, they came to us and said, we definitely want to get you on there, and they were Korean, Asian, Indian, and they took it through, but all the senior people at YouTube at that time were all these, I guess, tech bros.
So you go in, you meet with them.
No, we didn't even meet with them. We actually went through our contacts there who were like, listen, we're going to take it up the ladder and then we're going to get you guys in. And so they took it up to their tech bro bosses, and none of them had any idea who Russell was. And the strange thing is that like when they ran it through like all the other levels, everyone was super pumped, right? All the Indian programming kids, all the Chinese kids working there, all the ethnic kids that were working there were so pumped that we were going to be coming there. Then they took it right up the ladder, and the bros at the top were like, yeah, no, I don't know who he is. And they literally knew
That's
sort
amazing.
of the people that everybody knows. Well,
Right.
Can you get us Kevin Hart?
Right.
Can you get us Dave Chappelle? Can you get us Chris Rock?
And do you think at that time they were more concerned on creating what eventually would be the YouTuber? Is that maybe?
No, I don't even think that was
That
it,
was
because
even-
this isn't that long ago. You're talking about maybe 6-7 years ago. It's not like early days of YouTube.
Right.
But you would think they would have a better sense of
The history.
of the history and the fact that he was the original YouTube star.
Yeah.
Right. That's what launched our business was that.
Yeah, and it's funny, right? Because I hear a lot from creators about how, and they're called creators now. That was a comedy special. But I hear so much about how they try to create this perfect formula to be able to use social media. And then I think back to stories like that about how there was no strategy. There was it was not done purposefully. It wasn't a business plan. And then the disconnect now, when you can't, if you look at YouTube now, it is a show to try to get a certain amount of subscribers, to get a certain amount of content and seen and make money off of it. So it's not the same, but it's also a wonder to me that people don't document the history properly about how all of this, like there's no Wikipedia entry about this story, for example. You know what I mean? Not the return to YouTube, but just the 2004, how did this happen? Where did this come from? Where does the career go? And you've told the story many times. Like, you know what I mean? And I just find it interesting in history that there's so much of this early tech stuff that no one has a clue about how it started, who benefited from it.
Yeah, I don't know how much people really care, though. I know young people don't care. They just sort of take what's in front of them and, they accept it.
Okay, but let's talk about the don't care stuff for a little bit. Do you think that there's a worry a little bit about how much even you've done career-wise, et cetera, your first on certain streaming networks, first to negotiate, first to be in the room, all the stuff that you've been able to do and accomplish.
Yeah.
It's undocumented. It's not you might say it's cathartic, who cares, blah, blah, blah. It's history.
It's history. And again, this is weird for me because I don't like, one of the things that I'm going to have to work through as we explore this podcast of ours and see where it goes is being, as you say, more open, right? And being more open to talk about myself because I still sort of carry that, if there's anything that's Canadian about me, it's that sort of reticence to talk about myself and self-promote. Americans are fantastic at it. They're shameless at it, which I admire them for. But I personally, I'm not. It doesn't come naturally to me to sit and talk about myself and what we've done. It's almost, there's a bit of vulgarity to it, and it's just from being an old man, I guess. I look at it that way. It's kind of like talking about money.
No, I get it, and it also, you're still doing it.
I'm still doing it. Yeah.
So you're not. It's not hindsight, but I also think that there are certain moments that are so natural for you to be both proud of and be reflective upon that people can learn from. And that's the only real reason to do a podcast. Like, you want to be able to share your stories so that people, it clicks, something's there. And I do believe that your experiences are, and my experiences as well, being in the industry that we've been in, are so unique. There's no way that certain people are even going to be able to have these experiences. I was just looking at some of your old posts, and I was looking at the King Charles now post, and I thought to myself, it's one thing to be in the, it's just for the context, you've met
King Charles when he was Prince Charles. That was the last thing we did before COVID, actually. That was in February of 2019.
So give me the context of being in the UK and meeting the future king.
Yeah, we were there for the British Asian Trust, which is one of Prince Charles's charities that he's behind. And they invited my brother to come over and say a few words and do a little bit of a
shtick.
A little bit of shtick, yeah, a little bit of shtick. And we weren't sure what to expect from the whole thing. And Katy Perry was there, and there were a bunch of very wealthy Indian English people, or Asian people as they call themselves over there, at the event. And we didn't know what to expect from Prince Charles. We thought he was going to be, sort of as he's portrayed in the media and things like that. But he was awesome.
Oh, yeah?
He was a great guy.
Did he know?
Yeah, well, he was prepared. So when he gave his speech, he made reference to my brother. He made reference to The Indian Detective, which had just come out a couple of years earlier. And he said he has his own Indian Detective, which is his head of security, who's this big Indian dude who actually who's Scottish and wears a kilt and the full regalia. But Prince Charles was awesome. He was like the coolest guy. He had a great sense of humor. He doesn't take himself too seriously. Camilla was there. My brother was walking in front of him. My brother's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm blocking her." He goes, "Ah, it's all right. She's used to it." Right. But he was super, super cool. And I leaned in to talk to him, and he got to talking about doing the British Asian Trust in Canada because of us being part of the Commonwealth. And he goes, "We really should do that. We really should talk about that." And I was like trying to be respectful and not take up his time, right? Yeah. And then he kept talking, and finally somebody tapped me on the shoulder, and I was like, "Yeah, no, I'm cool, man. Like, I can't believe he's still talking, but like, I'm like, I think we have to move on." He goes, "Yeah," and he was super, super cool. He's got a great sense of humor, very charming. He's obviously self-aware as to who he is and how he affects people, and I also like the way he dresses. I've always liked the way he dressed. Always.
You like the vintage footage of him and Diana and all of that stuff.
All that stuff. But no, even his current suits with the soft shoulders and he has a way of pressing his jacket. When he gets it pressed when he's traveling, he has a crease down his jacket sleeves, which I really dig.
He's a king.
He's a king. No, but he dresses wicked. And I've always liked the way he dressed before I even met him. Yeah.
Did you have any other affinity towards royalty prior to something like that? Were you a fan? Were you that type
Yeah,
of
I'm not.
person?
I am
Yeah.
a bit of a monarchist. I kind of dig it. I like it. And I like Queen Elizabeth. I like the continuity from World War II all the way through. You've got to respect it,
I don't
right?
have to respect.
Well, you don't have to, but
No.
I like it.
Yeah.
I don't hate the monarchy the way some people do. I don't sort of shit on them and stuff like that.
The closest I got to the monarchy was Helen Mirren, who plays Queen Elizabeth and everything. And I treated her like she was Queen Elizabeth. I did the same thing. I didn't want to walk in front of her. I kind of bowed a little bit.
Have you ever seen her when she was younger?
Helen Mirren?
Yeah.
No.
Really? You've never seen The Cook, the Thief, the Wife, and her lover, and his lover? A hell of a movie.
Oh, yeah?
Oh yeah.
I don't think I've seen Helen Mirren in anything but royalty.
Oh, you see all of Helen Mirren in that movie.
Did she have one of those careers where she just bounced back and became queen?
She could
kinda?
bounce all right. You see
Oh
those
my
movies.
God.
Yeah, they're good stuff.
You just ruined the queen for me.
No.
And the
no,
one-
that young Helen Mirren was
Really?
really hot.
I don't think I ever even thought about what Helen Mirren was like before she was Queen Elizabeth.
That's because you're watching all those Bollywood movies,
Yeah.
which I
No.
don't get.
No, I think the biggest problem with you disconnect with you in Bollywood is that you've been to India
Yes.
before you lived through those films. So you kind of were exposed to both Indian cinema and when you went to India at the same time. So I could see why.
No,
No, I'm wrong.
you're wrong. I've never watched a Bollywood movie in my life.
Well, there you go. So then you got to deal with those guys without even watching their movies.
Well, yeah, some of them have been quite upset when they reference their mother, who's a famous actress, and I go, I don't know who that is. And they're like, how do you not know who that is?
Okay, so
wait a second though. How did you get into watching Bollywood? Because that was your thing,
yes,
right?
that was a thing.
So when you started,
Yeah,
where did you start? You started as a broadcaster.
Yeah.
Is that how you saw yourself? Did you study broadcasting?
Coffee Park drama major, high school.
Okay.
No,
So you wanted to be an actor? You wanted to?
I wanted to be an actor.
Okay.
I would at Coffee Park realize very quickly that there were no roles for brown people in any of the musicals, and to do my service, my acting service, whatever, to job, whatever, I'd go for extra roles. I don't know if you've ever been.
I have done extra work.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
So
I did a whole slew of it in the 90s.
there you go.
Yeah.
So I did extra work, and one time I was at an extra call for this movie called Common Ground. It was with Jane Curtis, the egghead, conehead, Jane Curtis.
Jane Curtin.
Curtin. She was the lead. It was about the segregation of the Boston school system.
Okay.
And they were shooting at Jarvis Collegiate. We show up, and they basically have a long line of extras. And it's the third director and the casting agent. And I'm in high school. And a white girl comes up, and they're like, okay, put a disco shirt on her, comb her hair straight. Goes with, it's whites against blacks in the movie, right? It's segregation of the Boston school system. So I'm in this lineup, and black person comes up, okay, put an afro on him, put him this, put him in the bus seat. Like they have everything. They get to me, and they stop for a second. They're like, the girl turns around and screams out, did they have Spanish people in Boston in the 70s? In front of everybody, and they're all looking around. So first of all, I'm not Spanish.
You're not?
No, not anymore. And second of all, it stuck with me, right? That they're like, it literally made it to this day. I talk about it with this whole like, and when you look at the film, like the miniseries, I'm with the white people protesting against segregation. Like, it's so weird where they put me. And it was just one of those eye openers where I realized, I'm not going to have this ability to walk into many situations and just kind of audition or anything like that. I also knew at that time that there were no brown filmmakers. There were no people making these stories. So my mission very quickly changed when I went to university to be a little bit like arts on the side and business in the front. Kind of like a hairdo, right? No,
Mullet.
Yeah. No, which is business in the
Business.
back.
No, business in the front, party in the back.
I'm bald, so I wouldn't know. I don't.
Sorry about that. How's my hair? Good.
And so after university, I didn't have many options to be able to actually try something because I didn't have a journalism degree. I only had a little bit of experience with the school paper, etc. And what ended up happening was in my final year of university, I got a phone call saying, "Hey, are you still interested in acting?" And I said, "No." And they said, "Okay, tough. Can you come down and be a stand-in in this Bollywood film?" And I was like, "Sure." And that completely changed my trajectory about falling back in love with Bollywood. I grew up with it in my household.
Your parents had it on all the time?
We were like you. We were like this generation of adopters. So the first VHS, VCR, etc., we had it, right? The first satellite dish, we had it, and a lot of that was because there was Indian entertainment starting to grow.
But CFMT had it on.
CFMT had it on right around the same time.
Yeah,
so you could record
Saturdays
it.
and Sundays.
Saturdays and Sundays.
Yeah.
You could record it and watch it anytime.
Yeah.
And Bollywood Boulevard was on at that time. And
were you on Bollywood Boulevard
I was on
at
Bollywood
that time?
Boulevard, yes. And so simultaneously, while that had happened, I got this bit part in a Bollywood film.
What film?
It's called Mr. and Mrs. Khilari with Akshay Kumar.
Okay. I know Akshay.
Yeah. And then
Oddly enough.
2 years. Yeah, we'll talk about Akshay. 2 years ago, 2 years after, I got a call from CFMT to open call audition, and it changed my life as well. I went as a part-time kind of dude interested in movies, and I completely changed the show. I went after every interview I could. I went after doing real stories. I went after talking the talk and showcasing directors.
So the whole thing was focused on Bollywood? All of that was Bollywood?
Most of it was an opportunity for me to take advantage of the fact that this audience existed, and I wanted to talk to all different types of people. And I used to sort of hide it in the Bollywood show and say, this is local content, or this person's an up and comer or an actor and stuff. And meanwhile, to be honest with you, I was just making my demo reel, so that when a mainstream station called or whatever, I could be like, hey, I did an interview with Russell Peters, or I produced this. So I'm not just the Bollywood guy. But sure enough, for 15 years after I did that show, and for the decade that I did it, I became the quintessential Bollywood critic in Canada. Most of the quotes that ended up in any papers, Variety, Hollywood Reporter, from me at that original decade in my life were all about Bollywood. And I'm really proud of it. By the time we were a decade in, we had the International IFA Awards, the Film Federation Awards.
Did you host that?
I hosted the green carpet that they did. But it went around the world. You know, I saw my family saw it, and everywhere from the West Indies right to India to the UK. That's a big deal for a guy.
Do people still recognize you from that?
I talk to a lot of people about Indian cinema still. I do some coverage. I did a feature for En Route with Priyanka Chopra. I do those sorts of things to keep me in the...
But Indian cinema and Bollywood are two different things.
Yes. Yeah. Well, the one thing I didn't tell you is that I'm the co-founder of the Toronto South Asian Film Festival. I started that in 1999 with my buddy, and I did that as the Sundance of Bollywood.
Does that still exist?
It does still exist.
Yeah, that's great. I knew that.
Yeah. No. I don't still run it. And so why would you?
Do you still participate in it?
No, I just keep it in the bio.
Okay. Do you go?
Well, it's since COVID, it doesn't really have its current iteration.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think that a lot of what we've spoken about right now is career trajectory and all that stuff. Are you a writer?
Am I a writer?
Yeah.
I have written.
Do you spend your time writing?
I don't spend my time writing. I want to spend my time writing.
And what would you spend your time writing about?
I don't like writing scripts. I have written a couple of scripts, and I find the format really, really difficult to get into. It's a really, really clunky way of writing. It's very difficult. I don't think people realize how difficult it is to write a script.
I hate reading scripts.
I hate reading them. I hate writing them. I think that people who write books it's a much
easier.
It's easier. It's easier because
And
you can
is
just
that
express
just the
yourself.
structure? Is that just the structure?
It's the structure.
Yeah.
Because you can't have long descriptive paragraphs when you're writing a script, right? You're literally writing a blueprint for a movie. A director has to look at that and understand that what's happening within that script.
And it's so funny because I will read a script after and think, how did they get from this to what I saw? It's one of the reasons why I said I could never be a director, because what if the vision that you have and the person that gave you all that money was different? And then all of a sudden you come up with a rough edit that they're like,
happens all the time.
That's
happens
nuts
all the
to me.
time.
Because from a creative standpoint, I can't even imagine Like, I mean, you're talking to somebody who works in an industry where you're constantly working to get paid. I can't imagine working 6 years on something that I saw on paper, and at the end of it, somebody saying, "No, you got it all wrong, dude." Like, that was not what we were thinking about. And half the time, the writer's not even there at the end.
Yeah,
of
well,
it.
the writer is considered secondary once it
crazy
gets up
to
and
me.
running. The
Doesn't
writer
it?
is irrelevant. They don't even want the writer on set. The writer is just like is forgotten in the process. It's very hard to be the writer in this, unless you accept that that's the parameter of it. But when it comes to the industry, if you want to get esteem and recognition as a writer, then you go into television. Okay, because television is a writer's medium, film is a director's medium, and theater is an actor's medium. So that's kind of how it's deconstructed. So depending on where you want to shine, you can choose whichever outlet you'd like.
So what is the internet then?
The internet's everyone's medium.
The internet's everyone's medium. So you should be able to use it as a stage, regardless of what platform you have, and figure out the crowd accordingly.
Exhibit A
Right.
and B.
Right.
Yeah.
And in understanding what you were just talking about, do you think that comedians understand that now? Because I feel like we got to a point where at first it was, don't ever record any of my stuff and put it online.
It's still like that.
Yeah. It is.
It's still like that.
The
yeah.
live shows, the Chappelle's, the Kevin Hart's.
Yeah. You still have to control your distribution. You can't just have the audience. You can't have the mob just deciding what they want to put out there on, what they've taped on their phone and put out there onto the thing.
Yeah, but
that's the only IP you've got. That's the only product you've got is your material, right? So
what
if
do
you're
you
going to put
okay.
it into distribution, then you have to control that distribution.
But half the comics need to do it in order to get people.
But then they can choose to do it. They can record what they want to record. They can distribute what they want to distribute. They can put it out there. But you can't have the public just deciding to put stuff out there on their own, because that is all that you have, right? If somebody records a comedian show and puts the whole thing on YouTube or wherever it is,
Yeah.
they've just taken all of that comedian's
Okay.
product.
So where do you stand on your IP? I can pull up my phone right now and like remix a clip of, that you might own and throw it on TikTok out of context.
That's fine. That's fine. There's nothing I can do about that.
There's nothing you can do. I know that.
Right. So you let that ride. Just
So
leave it alone.
let me ask you this. When did you realize that there's nothing you can do about that?
We've always known there's nothing we can do about it, but we always travel with our own security guys to make sure that nobody's taping the shows.
That's the physical taping.
That's the physical tape.
But if I get red, white, and brown and I, do the recut, the TikTok remix, blah, 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 and I put it onto 20,000, etc., you don't flag it?
No, what for?
Yeah.
And it's old content. It's now what, 18 years old, 16 years old,
Right.
right? So, we're not worried about that. That's not a big deal. Whatever
That's
happens,
so interesting
happens.
to me. Because I remember when record companies, that was their big focus, right? Or music companies where they're like, well, if we're not getting a share of every, title, then flag, inappropriate use, can't use.
Mm-hmm.
And now what's happening, ironically, is people who have built entire audiences like DJs and stuff on their remixes that they've done, etc. online, they're getting their stuff taken down because they did it prior to agreements. And so I think to myself, well, wait a minute. What does the estate of Rodney Dangerfield feel like, or Richard Pryor, when they see all these clips on Instagram and TikTok and stuff? Do they think to themselves, well, somebody's making money on it? Or do they think to themselves, well, that's kind of Creative Commons. That's what ends up happening. I don't know.
I think they just let it ride. I mean, you could be really persnickety about it and go through and try and get it all taken down. But ultimately, I don't know about the estates of dead people. Okay. Because it's not like it's multiple usage out of it. Like with music, you can take a James Brown sample and you can create a whole new song out of it, right? But he's the one who originated that particular piece of music. So in theory, he should directly benefit from that because you are using his product to create something entirely new. Remixing a comedian is not like a big thing, right?
I disagree. I'll
It's
tell you
not
why.
a big thing. Like it's not
Okay,
like,
so-
I'm not listening to remixed comedians in my car and depriving them of income.
So 911 is a joke. Flavor Flav. Samples Eddie Murphy, first album. Ha ha, very funny. Right? It's in there. It's a sample. Song wins a Grammy.
Yeah.
Does Eddie Murphy get a Grammy?
I don't think so.
No. But totally used out of context in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Still a great song. Who knows if Eddie's a Flavor fan or...
Well, I mean, if Eddie wants to fight it, he can fight it, right? But when somebody takes something of yours and puts it into the zeitgeist and makes it part of something that everyone's listening to and is very popular, it doesn't hurt you. And it's not the main thrust of the song. It's not like that is the entire song. That is one element of the song that takes you into it.
Let me ask you this. Eddie Murphy in this situation doesn't get anything, right? Mm-hmm. And the song gets 1 million spins.
Okay.
Let's say hypothetically 1 million spins is $1,500 or whatever. Eddie doesn't get any of it.
In today's world.
In today's world.
Okay.
Say. Eddie doesn't get any of that.
Right.
And you think that's okay?
I think it's okay.
You're saying that because you know Eddie doesn't need it.
I'm saying that because if they take him out of the song, it doesn't really make that much of a lick of difference to the song.
Oh, but now you're getting into okay.
So, how much is Eddie's participation in that song? Like,
what do you mean participation? Does 3 seconds mean participation?
Yeah.
Or what if the song was called "Ha Ha Very Funny Motherfucker"?
Well, then that's a different song,
wow.
right? That's different though.
What? If that one sample was still used, but the song was called the sample?
It's a completely different animal altogether.
That's interesting. So let me ask you this: somebody takes a person might get in trouble, or another catchphrase that you're familiar with, that you put on T-shirts, and remixes it into Nicki Minaj.
It's happened 1 million times. So what?
Nothing to you.
Doesn't mean anything.
Wow. What if it was your only catchphrase?
Well, if it is your only catchphrase, I mean, that's on you.
What if it was dynamite?
That is what it is.
Does he have another catchphrase?
Who's that?
Jimmy Walker have another catchphrase?
No, that's his catchphrase.
What?
That's it.
Does Mr. T have a catchphrase?
I think so.
Okay. Well, listen, I think we have a lot to explore.
We do.
And this was a great way to introduce people to the variety of conversations we could possibly have.
Okay.
But the good point about it is, we got a lot more to talk about.
We do. I think we've been a little bit businessy focused, a little tech happy, a little RP happy.
I think it's a natural thing for us to be able to reflect on this conversation and figure out what parts that we like and what we don't, and then continue to grow, because that's the point of doing a podcast.
The one thing about us is we sort of know each other. Okay. Like we know each other, but we don't really know each other. And that's what made our lunches very enjoyable over the COVID and over the last couple of years. And where was I going with that?
I think you were trying to figure out what it is exactly that we might actually know about each other.
Well, we might know about each other and what we're going to explore in this podcast about each other.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think you're an interesting guy.
I know.
And you're an interesting guy.
I do. I spend a lot of time with myself.
And your wife.
I spend more time with myself than with my wife.
And how many children?
3.
3.
3 children. Mm-hmm. Everything I do in my life on a daily basis revolves around stuff that I love to do. I don't do anything anymore that has any discomfort in my life career-wise. That's been my mission.
That's amazing.
It's not, because now I have to figure out a way to make more money doing it.
And doing things that are uncomfortable?
Yeah. I have to live the life that I painted the picture of being able to do. But I can do it. I think one of the things that we both are coming to terms with is how many people live with imposter syndrome because they're actually fucking imposters. And then there's people like ourselves that are like, oh no, I'm going to go learn how to do it so that no one could ever question whether I know how to do it. And I'm really one of those people. Like, I'm definitely not sitting here talking about tech and media and all that stuff because I want people to think I'm cool. I want to go and learn about it so that if I ever get called to action, I really know what I'm talking about. And if I don't, then I'm not going to talk about it. Imposter
syndrome is a huge thing in this business, especially in show business.
Yeah.
And if you talk to anybody within the business, and that goes from the top agents on down, imposter syndrome comes up in a number of conversations. I've heard it comes up in their retreats. I've heard it comes up in their meetings, where a lot of the agents and managers, including the actors and artists as well, everybody has imposter syndrome. Everybody's under the belief that, wait, they're going to find out that I actually don't know anything and that I don't deserve to be here and that I shouldn't be here. It's a massive part of this business. And that's why there's so much insecurity in it.
Yeah.
And that's why people act out and really misbehave within this business because of that imposter syndrome. There's a lot of people acting in a way that they think this is how I'm supposed to act.
Sure.
Right? There's, people who think they're supposed to act like Harvey Weinstein, right? Or those old time producers, with the casting couch, or yelling at their assistants and throwing things at them because they think that's how they're supposed to act.
Right.
Toronto's got imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Toronto's got crazy imposter
That's interesting. I was talking to a friend about that the other day, about the fact that, you can live and die in the media scene in Toronto and have no real grasp of what the world media scene is really like because of that. Because you can just kind of like live in it and think this is what the world must be like. There's jobs, there isn't jobs, whatever. I don't know anything outside of the bubble. But most of the people that leave Toronto and find any sort of success say the same thing, that Toronto has a huge imposter syndrome problem.
Yeah, you go to New York and people are always like, oh, New York, everyone must be rude and aggressive and like really like volatile. People in New York are fantastic. People in New York are absolutely wonderful. I've not met anyone in New York that I didn't like, that wasn't polite, respectful. You ask for directions. People are very helpful. I was talking to somebody recently about the Toronto imposter syndrome, and they were saying that they came out of New York and they were going to the clubs up here. And these are young people, not like myself. And they couldn't believe how sort of menacing all the young dudes were in the clubs and bars over here. Because everyone's trying to act hard, right? And everyone's trying to, they're sort of acting like these hard Jamaican guys and things like that. But they're sort of acting in a way that they think they're supposed to act in a big city, right? And it's completely unnecessary. And I got a big criticism of Toronto for that, because it's a really, really strange phenomenon here. Even customer service in restaurants and stuff like that, it's really, really annoying sometimes, the attitude that people have here. And I think it has to do with that imposter syndrome. This is how I'm supposed to act kind of thing in the big city.
That's interesting, because I don't necessarily equate the downtown Toronto vibe the same as I do in the separate neighborhoods in like the GTA, Toronto, Canada stuff. And so I find a completely different vibe in Vaughan or in a Mississauga or a, Brampton than I would in Toronto. I think Toronto plays its part, like you say, like it plays its part as pretending to be a big city and wanting to have that nice nightlife and club, and that you should pay the extra to do all of that. But that's also the Drake effect, right? Like you kind of have a global star in the city that warrants people to come from all sort of walks of life to get a little bit of the sixth charm. And unfortunately, that brings in the people that are in the corner and thugging it out and making themselves want to look like Toronto hard.
Have you met Drake? Do you know him?
I have met Drake, yes. I don't but again, that's not his fault.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just curious. Have
That's
you
a
met
cultural map thing. I'm sure when Nelly was popping off in the St. Lunatics, St. Louis had a moment. You know what I mean? Like, So
you have met him?
I've met him. Yeah, you've met him.
I've met him.
Yeah, Aubrey.
He's a good dude, actually.
He's a good dude.
I like him. I like him very much. I think he's as surprised by his success as anybody. I think he's just as surprised as anyone by his success.
Do you want to play do you want to play that game? You want to play the First Time I Met Drake game?
No.
We should play that game.
I've met him a couple of times.
Yeah,
and I've always liked him. I thought he was a really good guy. He was a nice guy. Really, really nice guy.
Yeah. He's a nice guy.
That's all I got.
Yeah.
That's all I got on the Drake.
Just can't deny the accolades, can't deny the hits.
I can deny the hits.
You can deny the hits because you don't listen to it.
No,
but
I don't.
If you
I like the black. I like that song with Black Coffee. That's Superman, I think it's called, or something like that. Superman, maybe. Yeah, I like that.
Right.
But the rest of it does not resonate with me. That's in my old ass. No.
Yeah, we are a family of Drakeites, Drakeanettes.
So you guys listen? You actually listen to it in the house and in the music in the car?
I quote it.
Really?
Like, so I'm a hip hop fan and a comedy fan. I'm a nerd about both. I don't have any real dealings in any of the businesses of those two businesses, but I have so many stories about them. I covered hip hop when I was in Mac. Like, it was my first journalism experiences was interviewing people like Guru and Busta Rhymes way out of context. Like, I was not even supposed to be there, getting press passes and stuff like that. And so
Imposter syndrome.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Like to the point where I love telling the stories now because look, it worked out right at the end. At the end of it, it made me much better at what I was able to do. But it's interesting, Clayton. Like you and I can talk about so many different things that we've done in our lives that really have nothing to do with what we do, you know, on a daily basis, or where we were, or what purpose we were there for. Even, you know, the story about the king/prince. It's really not a journey that brings you straight to, oh, I finally got to meet royalty, right? And I think that's the fascinating thing about learning a little bit more about each other is that we end up understanding, like even in the context of flippantly saying, oh yeah, Drake, blah, 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 Aubrey, to a lot of people listening, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
That watching this person grow up in our city
Yeah.
and understanding how a conversation goes from joking around with somebody to you can't even talk to them. Like that's a trajectory that no one has a front row seat to. No, I mean, not many people have a front row seat to. And I think it's fascinating because on one hand, we can talk about it and laugh about it, but to people who are listening, they're just like, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. Like that's,
I guess so. Yeah.
That's kind of a neat thing to be able to say offhand. Like, I remember meeting him for the first time and not realizing he wasn't in a wheelchair. I didn't know that because I didn't watch Degrassi.
Neither did I.
And it wasn't until he walked by at a PlayStation event. I will remember to this day, I was at a PlayStation 2 launch event. The Roots were performing. Nobody was paying attention to the Roots because everybody was playing with this new game console that nobody had seen. And he walked by and he was on his sidekick or whatever, like that didn't look like it was supposed to be on his face, like whatever he was talking on. And he was complaining about the fact that nobody was watching the Roots and he wasn't watching the Roots because he was on his phone. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, he walks? Oh, that's weird. I wonder why they wouldn't hire somebody that was in a wheelchair. Never thought about it.
And was he Drake at that time or was he just the Aubrey?
He was Aubrey from Degrassi.
Degrassi.
Yeah. He didn't really have anyone around him at that time.
That's amazing.
I have other stories I'll share, including how my daughter broke security to talk to him once. And you know how security is. Yeah, I'll share that story. A very uncalled for moment when she didn't even realize like he was a star or anything. She just wanted to do something at a very young age and naively.
So that's something we can look forward to in
the
the future.
That's a tease, I think they call it in the business.
Neat.
I also have a tease about the first time that you and I spoke when I didn't realize it wasn't your brother. I thought it was your brother playing a joke on me.
When was that?
That was CFMT. Omni.
And that was what, 2001?
2. Yeah.
Okay.
You want me to tell you the story?
Tell me the story.
Yeah.
Because again, I don't recall how we met. You were just sort of, you know, I'd go to a movie premiere and you would be there. You'd go to another function and you would be there. And you'd be very debonair and, you know, you'd have on a nice suit and you were tall and slim.
Right.
My wife found you very amusing.
Yes.
Whenever she'd meet you.
It still does.
I don't know. I have no recollection of how we met. You were just sort of ubiquitous.
Yeah, I get that often. Because I straddled both sides, right? I was on the white entertainment side because I worked at Breakfast Television, and I was on the brown entertainment side because I worked at Omni. I'm the son of immigrants. I worked 7 jobs in the media business when I finally got my first one. I used each one to get a pass card in the other news department. It's wrong, but at the same time, we met, and I met, you know, prime ministers, and I interviewed amazing people. And so in hindsight, it was great. No job security in it, though. We met because your brother and I were supposed to do an interview. And you called me to tell me that he was going to be 2 hours late.
That's about right, yeah.
And I didn't believe it wasn't him.
Okay.
I thought it was him calling me saying, this is my brother, you know, this is whatever. And I was like, what? Like, dude, yeah, okay, I get it. Because you sounded alike on the phone. And then there was this whole winter tires thing, and he didn't know if he was going to get there. He was driving a Lexus, all this whatever stuff. And I was like, just like people are on standby in studio. I've got a part-time job here.
I hear you.
I can get
it was brutal. He's brutal with the timing.
But that's the first time we met. And then you
was that at CFMT then?
CFMT, yeah. Yep. You came to the studio and complained about
that was on Lakeshore, right?
Lakeshore, yeah. Complained about the fact that we had stairs and we didn't have the elevator.
That sounds about right for me.
Yeah. And that's how we met. But we didn't exchange contact. We had a great thing there. And it wasn't until finally You had come back from one of your sort of travels. We connected on email when you finally became familiar on email. And that's how
I became familiar on email?
Yeah.
Or with email?
Yeah, you weren't. None of you guys were extremely techie to begin with.
Sending email is techie?
Well,
it'll get better, folks. Believe me, it'll get better. I'll be a little more relaxed. Like I said, Mohit's got his 10,000 hours under his belt. I've got 10 hours under my belt. This doesn't come naturally to me at all. But I thought we'd give this a shot. So I'm kind of happy that we've got this first episode done, and we've got some things to figure out. We've got some continuity stuff with microphone stands. We've got video stuff to figure out. How do you think
somebody gets a job in continuity? Like, do you think there's tests?
You just got to pay attention. Yeah.
Is that the first thing on your resume for continuity?
I pay attention.
Can you imagine how crazy somebody in continuity must be about their resume? Like, just the format of it? Speaking of which, do you still have a resume?
No. I thought about that recently.
Yeah.
I don't have a resume, but I can add this to it now.
Yeah.
One episode of Fries for the Table.
That's true.
We have to explain the name of the show too. Well, we'll do that in the next episode.
Maybe we'll do that in the season finale. We'll do that.
Will they or won't they?
Well, yeah. Will there be a season 2? We'll find out next time.
Next time.
All
right, man. Do we shake hands or something?
No, don't touch me. No, not that part.
No,
you're making it difficult now to edit around.
I know.
This is the.
I know. It was supposed to be awkward.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
Can we get some fries for the table?